Hello. Hello. I can't hear you.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Are we the only ones here?
It looks like it.
Well, the meeting will come to order.
I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, you match your pillow.
I matched my pillow. I matched my watch band. I matched my
Oh.
sweater
When did you get that watch band?
online, but I'm going to get another one still. This one it's almost too big, and I can get one that I can adjust. That'll be the material too. I really like the material, but this is okay.
It doesn't.
They're only like $10,
The whole thing? No.
the band.
How much is the phone?
The phone, the watch.
The watch, sorry.
Oh no, that's a couple $100.
Oh, okay. Okay. Did you print out the agenda?
No, I can go on it real quick.
Well, how do you do that?
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Lynn. Hello.
Hi, Doug.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, good.
We're good. Yeah. Hello.
Hi, Doug.
Hello, Doug.
You're muted.
I am muted.
No, looks like Doug is.
Doug is muted.
No, I'm
Hi,
not.
Candace.
There you go.
Okay.
Hi, Candace.
Hey everyone.
Hi,
Hi.
Candace.
Okay.
I just got a little text from Catherine. She's having some trouble with her computer, so I'm gonna step in. She's
Oh.
coming, but she won't be able to run the meeting as well because she'll be on her phone. So
Okay.
so I'm getting my ducks in a row here. I printed
Yeah,
it.
it's the last meeting of the year and you're going to run it, huh?
I'm gonna, but Catherine will be here, so
Okay.
we'll get it done.
Yeah.
I'm here, I just can't see anybody.
Yay.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Yes.
Right, thank you. Bunch of glitches for this last meeting of the year.
That's the way it works. Gremlins.
Lynn, were you over at the garden this morning?
I was not. I need to get over there because I'm sure there are some lovely friendly weeds waiting for me. But
But does it get enough water?
I think so. I mean, it sure did yesterday because there was a lovely storm. So I think that was okay, but it seems to be doing okay.
Good.
Yeah. Robert has been saying, I'll show you how to set that sprinkler a little bit better. So I need some lessons on that. So he'll get over there with me one of these days. He went over today and put the second gate in. So now we have two
Oh.
gates to get in.
Wonderful.
One down by the sprinkler box and then one in the middle.
This is good that we're having this meeting. It makes me sit down at my computer and clean off my desk. It's been a while. I usually, with my phone, I lots of times don't get down to the desk computer.
Oh. Todd's here, Lila's here, Tom's here. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Tom.
Oh, by the way, Todd, I've about completed my poll of the UU men. And it's pretty almost unanimous that people are willing to change to the second Saturday, which would not then conflict with the worship service for NAUA.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Please thank them for me. That would be certainly convenient for us.
Yeah, and I'll change the notice in the Sun, work with Rebecca to change that so it reflects that alteration.
Wonderful. Thank you for doing that. Turns out the monthly men's meeting, which starts at 8:30, overlapped slightly with the NAUA worship service on that same Saturday.
That's a once a month thing, the men's breakfast.
Yeah, both of them are once a month.
Yep.
Is it always at Rockwood, Tom?
Well, got it almost as long as I can remember. I took it over from Gordon Diddens,
Okay.
and we suspended it during the heaviest part of COVID, and then we started it up toward the end of COVID. I can't recall, beforehand where it was, but it works because, we can sit there for 2 hours and just talk. It was isolated when we were still worried about COVID and people had to be screened in for COVID issues and all that stuff. So it was just a good place to do it. So right now, that's where it is. And the food is pretty good and quite reasonable in price.
Food is very good.
Good.
We're waiting for Dick and Betsy.
Dick and Betsy are coming. I think Lilia and
I'm here.
Dick
Dick.
Steele,
The other Steve. There it is.
Richard Steele.
That's right. We have to get used to that. Yeah.
Right.
I used to go by Dick. Does he go by Richard or Dick?
He goes by both, so we can call him Richard. Of course, this will be his last board meeting, at least as a board member, so.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know this Dick. I don't think I've met. I'm Doug.
You
Yeah,
haven't met Dick
yeah,
before.
So Dick is one of our distant members who lives in the Seattle area.
ah, great.
Mhm.
I actually live in the Seattle city limits
Oh, do you?
in southeast Seattle, which is reputed to be one of the most diverse zip codes in the United States.
Wow.
You know,
Oh,
people of European American ancestry are maybe a quarter of the population.
Hmm.
And then we have lots of African American, real Africans like Somali, and lots of people from Asia, all over the world.
Mhm.
Jewish,
That sounds like a good church. Sounds fun.
yeah. Except my church is a little bit outside the city, south of Seattle in Des Moines. about almost a 25-minute drive down there.
Yeah,
Oh,
your other church. Dick is a member of 2 congregations.
Right.
Hi, Betsy.
Oh, there's Betsy. Hi, Betsy.
Hey, gang. The gang's all here. Oh, wait.
So
yeah.
that gives us, well, that gives us a quorum. We have 4 of us, right? So, Richard Dick doesn't text that I know of, so I won't send him a text, but I bet he'll be here.
I
So,
can text Karen.
oh, you can? Does she text?
I will do that.
Great.
And I'm sure, well, he was at the agenda setting meeting, the exec team, so he didn't say he was not planning on being here, so. I'm going to run this meeting for Catherine. Catherine is with us, but kind of stepping to the side. She's having some computer issues tonight, so she can't really see everybody. So I've got the agenda printed and I'm gonna do my best to lead
All
us
my
through.
Gmail disappeared too.
My goodness, Catherine.
I know. Technology, everybody's favorite, certainly my favorite.
geez, I
So
think. we
call
might be
to
in.
order at 6:06. How's that, Candace?
I'm writing it down.
And I don't, anybody have anything that we need to change on the agenda? Any amendments for tonight? Okay, we'll go ahead with the agenda as it's written. Any amendments or additions or deletions or anything, changes to the May board meeting minutes? I thought they were fabulous, Candace, all in one page. I was quite
Oh.
impressed. Because that was an extra half-hour long meeting we went.
Excellent. Well, there was a lot of discussion.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion. So, okay, so without any additions or any changes to that, we'll just by consensus approve those May minutes. Great. Okay, onward to Todd for opening words.
Yes, this is a selection from a very small book. It's probably just an essay that got turned into a book by a philosopher named Harry Frankfurt. Some of you may have seen it. It's called and it is a book on bullshit, of course. And so I thought, given that the board is often expected to deal with a lot of matters, some of which some may know more about than others, that it might be a good way to start tonight's meeting by reminding everyone that we don't expect any of you to know everything. Okay, so why is there so much bullshit? Of course, it is impossible to be sure that there is relatively more of it nowadays than at other times. There is more communication of all kinds in our time than ever before, but the proportion of that is bullshit may not have increased. Without assuming that the incidence of bullshit is actually greater now, I will mention a few considerations that help to account for the fact that it is currently so great. Bullshit is unavoidable whenever circumstances require someone to talk without knowing what he is talking about. Thus, the production of bullshit is stimulated whenever a person's obligations or opportunities to speak about some topic exceed his knowledge of the facts that are relevant to that topic. This discrepancy is common in public life, where people are frequently impelled, whether by their own propensities or by the demands of others, to speak extensively about matters of which they are to some degree ignorant. Closely related instances arise from the widespread conviction that it is the responsibility of a citizen in a democracy to have opinions about everything, or at least everything that pertains to the conduct of his country's affairs. The lack of any significant connection between a person's opinions and his apprehension of reality will be even more severe, needless to say, for someone who believes it is his responsibility as a conscientious moral agent to evaluate events and conditions in all parts of the world. So, something to think about as we think about things.
That'd be a great reading for Kara. What, you should have brought that last night.
We'll have to do that. That's true. That's a good one.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Eckloff. Onward to the president's report, Catherine.
Well, all I'm really reporting is just how much I've appreciated being part of this board, and I'll be departing it with 3 other members, with Candace and Lynn and Dick, who we all started together in the beginning, and it's been a wonderful 3-year time, and I really truly appreciate the whole process and getting to know all the people here. And I imagine I'll be popping in for other meetings as time goes on, but I wish you all the best, and you really have my thanks. It's been a good journey.
Thank you, Catherine. It has been quite a journey. I just said to Robert, this is my 35th. I think we only took 1 meeting off in the past 3 years. This is my 35th board meeting tonight. Okay. So we are on track now, guys. Doing good for time. So minister's report. Todd.
Yes, so I guess 2 things. The first is just an update on NAUA. It may be that somebody else can inform us about the outcome of the General Assembly. But one thing I noticed throughout the week is a lot more interest in NAUA than usual. A lot more people subscribing, at least to our emails and to our Liberal Beacon magazine, and a few more folks joining. So I think a lot more people are kind of recognizing the handwriting on the wall, if you will. The NAUA is in a place now in its early existence where we have enough members to actually start putting together some committees, some necessary committees. So we've been working on that, which to me is the next step in its evolution towards becoming a real working presence and force in our among our members and in the world. So that's very rewarding. And then finally, I would say this summer I will be spending some time on my Sundays off visiting congregations elsewhere. I'll be going to one in Alabama in July. September. I'll be visiting one in Colorado in August. I hope to do a couple more in Washington before summer's out, or at least in the early fall. So to kind of start focusing on getting the word out about the organization and helping it grow, and ultimately move from a place of reaction against the UUA's departure from our liberal religious tradition to a more positive move or approach towards expressing our traditional liberal religion. We have to remember that as new members come in, that everybody's at sort of a different place, right? Our congregation has been dealing with this at least for the past 4 years. But there are some people that just found out something's going on at this General Assembly. What do you mean you got rid of the 7 principles? You know, and they some of them even feel, well, this is too soon. Why would you start a whole new association? You know, they're not realizing we've seen this along the way. So there's quite a balance trying to figure out how to continuously assist those who are kind of in shock and disappointment and dealing with anger and grief and that kind of stuff, and those of us that are ready to move in a more positive direction. And that's a balance. And, we never want our, as I say, our reason for coming into existence to become the elephant in the room, that we just don't talk about the UUA. But we also want to make sure that we are channeling that energy in a positive direction. And I like to report on this at the board as I have been, because I really feel that the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane is a founder of NAUA. I think this is really a service our congregation has allowed me to help create, but also has been supporting and is a part of. So that is where NAUA is at. More locally, the big news is, and I'll say this tonight, it will go out in our Sun tomorrow, but I received word from Deborah Jackman on Friday that she intends to retire. But believing that she would need to either sign the new agreement, which cuts her position into half-time from full-time. She was making that retirement date effective at the end of this calendar year, which is this week, June 30th. I suggested that Deb continue under the contract that she had through August, and that she take her 2-month vacation period, which she usually does in the summer, and let us continue paying her at her normal rate for 2 months, so that she can maintain her benefits and do everything necessary to switch those over to whatever she's going to do from this point on, but also to give us an opportunity as a congregation to plan a retirement party and to be able to say thank you to her in a way she deserves. She has been a member of an employee of this congregation for almost 34 years. And to my knowledge, is the longest, that's the longest term any employee, minister included, has ever had at this congregation. And it would be very sad to me if I just had to announce that Deb retired. I hope you had a chance to say goodbye. So she has agreed to that. It does dip more into our budget than we wanted, because we were now budgeted for a half-time position for 12 months, not for 10 months. But I just really feel strongly that this is the right thing to do. It's by no means a golden parachute, but I think Deb deserves a little more than a slap on the back and saying, atta girl, thank you so much. So we will figure out how to compensate for that as the year goes on. And I think that's about the best we can do. Hey guys, Chester, be quiet, buddy, please. So anyway, that's my I think that was the end of my report there. I have talked with our personnel committee. Betsy Rush is on that, and I think we all agree that is the best thing to do. So Deb officially will not be working starting really this week. She'll be coming in the office and wrapping up some things, but will officially be entering into her vacation period. So folks can call her, check in on her, that kind of thing, but we won't be seeing her at services during the summer. So officially her work is over with us, or maybe not officially, but practically speaking, her work is over with us, and she is easing into retirement. So thought I would start off by letting you know that, and I'm happy to answer any questions I can, but that otherwise is my report.
Wow. Good for her. That's pretty exciting. Did I miss this? I might have missed something because my dog was doing something too, but I heard you say there's going to be a retirement party. Will that's not in the works yet, or
No, I would hope.
How will that?
Who will do that? That's a good question. I'm not sure yet. I figure we have a couple of months to make it happen, so probably ask for some volunteers. People who've had a long relationship with Deb, perhaps choir members, but it would be nice to really, I think, do something spectacular for her that the whole church could come and celebrate.
Yeah. Great. Tom?
Well, one of the things I would say, and my conversations with Debbie, actually for probably the last 2 or 3 years, was her looking forward to retirement and not saying when it would be coming, but I guess it's here. So it's something that she's been on her mind for some time, at least that she shared with me. But let me go back, something kind of is troubling me as I went back to Catherine's report. I pulled up the chart, Catherine, and others that last prepared by Dick. And as I read his chart, you, Catherine, are completing the first year of a 3-year term, which would mean that you're resigning rather than your term ending, means that board will have to be fulfilling 2 years of a 3-year term. And am I missing something here? Because I am looking at the chart last prepared by Dick, effective July 1 of 2023.
Catherine, if you're responding, you're muted.
Catherine's been on the board longer than that, though, Tom. So how could that be completing
Well,
the first
I
year?
think what she was in was the beginning of
Yeah, no,
the
that's
second,
correct.
the second term.
Yes, you're correct, Tom.
You are.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay,
she
so-
she actually is stepping off early.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. She did a
I'd like for her
3-year
to-
and then.
I'd like for her to speak for herself, but I think, as I understand it, someone can correct me, that her mother has entered into some health issues on the west side of the state, and she is going to be traveling there to be a bigger part of her life, at least for a
She's-
while.
She's texting me saying she can't access her voice, so she can't get
Okay.
herself unmuted.
Okay, well, then just as a summary, since we've gotten some acknowledgement that this is right, what we have in this chart prepared by Richard Steele is that Dick Burkhart's term expires in 2026, Doug Deaton's expires in 2026, mine expires in 2026, Lilia's expires in 2025, Catherine's expires in 2025, which would mean that we have to come up with an appointment as a board. And Betsy's expires next year and Sarah Darcy's expires next year.
That's correct.
Is
That's
that
correct.
correct?
Mhm.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure that, because I understood that she was stating that her term ended, and that I just wanted, if that was
Yeah.
incorrect, I wanted to make sure
Oh.
we got corrected.
Yeah, and
No.
if the board chooses to fill that seat, it of course would only be for a year until
2
the
years.
next.
No, it'd be 2 years.
Oh, no, wouldn't it have to be approved by the
Oh,
contribution in the year?
oh,
Yeah.
you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be an appointment for the second year of a 3-year term, and then we'd have an election for the 1 year, kind of like we happened with Sarah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the board, with that announcement, the board probably needs to notify the nominating committee to search for an appointment. I'm not sure how you all did that before.
No, that's something that the board can decide whether or not they want to appoint somebody. We talked about it. This was in the minutes from last month. Catherine's resignation was in our board minutes draft.
Okay,
So, and we talked about it at the last meeting, or at the meeting for the planning for the annual meeting, I think we talked about it. Right, so, and Nancy Avery was there. And that was, I mean, it was just a little bit too quick, too close to the annual meeting to be able to find somebody from the nominating team. So it was just sort of left to be up to the incoming board to decide whether or not they wanted to appoint. So it might be something, one of the first things you discuss.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, we'll get into that at that time, yeah. All right. Just want to make sure everybody had a common understanding.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. All right, Candace, operations team.
All right, I have 4 items. The ops team has decided to contract with Pro Mechanical to install a new heating unit for the sanctuary. Plans are to have this work done as soon as possible so it's ready prior to fall. The cost will be about $14,500 plus tax. And that's from Pro Mechanical, the same company we use currently for the HVAC maintenance. And this quote was about $2,000 less than the other quotes that came in. Repairs to the building needing to be made include the outside southeast corner of the sanctuary, where the rain gutter is leaking, causing some damage, and outside of the chapel where birds have continued to cause damage over the years. The team will seek out a contractor / handyman to fix these issues. And then Robert and Lynn Janician have installed 2 beautiful new gates to the community garden, the raised beds. And lastly, there was some damage to the garden shed siding, apparently due to a failed attempted break-in. Robert Janician and Don Willingham have volunteered to fix the damage. So it's a short one this month.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, next on our list, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. Good. We've got some time to discuss. We wanted to have a little annual meeting debrief for, well, hopefully to think about some things that went right, some things that we could possibly do better, and some things that we might want to fix now, and things to think about in the upcoming annual meeting next year. So I'll start with just a one thing that I want to just say is I'm definitely deeply sorry, because I know that Dick Burkhart was attending via Zoom, and I had a very difficult time. The Zoom piece of that was incredibly much more complicated for me to try to run the Zoom. I wasn't anticipating the delay in the timing, and I don't think it's like that when we are actually in a Zoom room where the church service is live. So technology will need to be certainly addressed to have full ability to participate for anyone who's attending via Zoom. The delay was actually several minutes in some places, so any vote that was taken was not really counting the people on Zoom, nor could they really follow. The sound was just incredibly poor. So lots of things to be fixed, I think, for technology, but technology is always ever evolving. I can put you into breakout rooms and I can run an exam on Zoom, but it's really tricky. I would also really highly recommend for all the positions in an annual meeting that we get more people on board. So if a board member is planning on speaking or doing motions, like I had 2 motions to cover, that's probably not the person to be running the Zoom room. We have some lovely Zoom attendees, regular Zoom attendees from our church now too, that are really good at hosting our Zoom room. So I think that would just be a really easy fix to actually put us into the Zoom room. And so everybody's on the same time frame. And then not having somebody who's doing any other parts try to run the Zoom part. Would have been good to have another person doing that. But Rebecca was fabulous trying to scramble and help me a bit with it. So yeah, Dick.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that it's often much more difficult to do hybrid meetings properly. And I wonder if there is anyone in the Spokane area that could sort of act as a consultant who's really, really good at hybrid meetings. If so, someone there has an issue, they can get some good advice on it.
It's a good question. I don't know, but we certainly have a year to find such an organization, business person that might know how to do that and give us some sound advice. I do think if we had run it through our streaming service the way we do on the first service on Sunday mornings, we probably would not have had the delay at the very least. So that might solve 75% of the problem or more next time around.
Yeah, and I think I did notice in my other church in Seattle, Saltwater, they seem to do very well with Zoom meetings. Well, not Zoom, but Zoom is easy, but with hybrid meetings, because that seems to be the trouble. It seems like you have to have the right distribution of microphones and the right kind of hardware and everything feeding in right. And plus they have 2 people all through the service for the hybrid.
I think that is the key. I mean, when I was teaching and we did hybrid classes, particularly during COVID, one of us would be in the classroom and the other one in the classroom, but also in the Zoom room, managing the chat.
Mhm.
Right. So it's just impossible really to try to do both of those things. You can't be certainly at the podium talking and trying to count votes and do all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And you definitely can't do it with the time lag. So,
Well,
but I do think it works really well with on our Sunday morning services. I think I've participated via Zoom, and having that host in there, it just works really well to, and certainly Todd Milne in the back. So when you have the tech support, somebody in front of everybody and somebody on Zoom in managing the room, it really works pretty well. Tom.
well, 2 questions. One of Dick. Do you have a contact there at Saltwater where you can find out what software they use and how they got themselves keyed up to make things work at their church, and share that with us sometime in the future?
Guys, our friends and family are freaking out.
Yeah, I might be able to do that. I've just talked, briefly there's always a pair of people, but I'd have to sit down and talk extensively, but maybe I could try to do that. But it'd be good if I did that from the point of view of understanding what you guys are doing. If you could write up a description of what you're actually doing now, then I could see what they're doing at Saltwater and look at the differences.
Well, that was kind of the other question I had. Is the obvious question is, why weren't we using the system that we use on Sunday morning for the first service? If that works, what were we doing? Trying something else?
Well, we weren't trying. We didn't know it wasn't going to work. So we just logged into Zoom and thought it would work.
Oh.
Didn't
And-
realize that it needed to be an actual Zoom room, that it's something even different. It's technology way beyond my scope. I don't
Yeah.
know what a Zoom room is. I just know how to manage a Zoom like this.
Yeah,
So,
I think in addition to that, they have two people at Saltwater, but they're very experienced. And just because you have two people doesn't mean it's gonna work. They have to know what they're doing. And that's the other thing. But there was another issue. I've always wondered about the sound. It seems to be that maybe the sound in a live stream may be a little bit better than the sound underneath Zoom. Has anyone else noticed that before, especially in the music?
Yeah, that's most definitely true. Yeah, the sound quality and visual quality is much better on the stream. Of course, you're using higher quality equipment, microphones and cameras to get that. So
Well, that might be a longer term project. How can you bring the Zoom quality up to the live stream quality? Because I didn't know anything about it, but I just had that feeling that somehow the live stream was better. And if you're, there people will come in for the music and things like that, they may prefer the live stream.
yeah. Yeah, I think so. The Zoom offers a greater sense of community, but you're dependent upon the internal features of the Zoom to adjust your audio quality, and that's not really always intuitive. You have to remember to check certain boxes if you're playing music, and check certain boxes if you're sharing audio, and so that does take some experience.
The
But
experience.
I really think it would work well enough if we had the quality we have on Sunday mornings at the first service. That would be, it's not to say we should just count on it. It probably warrants having a run through thing next year. But I do think that just tying it into our own system as we do on the first early service with our Zoom, we get better results, because we can have, we do have folks who Zoom in that first service, talk with us during our service. So if they had questions, they could ask those in front of the whole body. They'd be able to hear better and respond in real time. So
Yeah, I always come in on the first service there. And but until you get really good quality for both, it might be possible to suggest to people that they actually switch to the live stream, like during the sermon and some of the music, and only use the Zoom in a couple of spots where you might want to introduce yourself or some kind of feedback, or in the Zoom room afterwards.
the only difference there though is when you're live streaming, you're a little off time too.
that's
So,
true. The live stream is about 30, 40 seconds off. Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, so I'm thinking if you switch back and forth, you might always switch once or twice in the whole service. Not, there might be one time near the beginning where people in the Zoom room might have some interaction. But
I think the folks who Zoom really prefer the Zoom, and they know that
yeah,
they know it's shortfalls, and we have more people who stream than Zoom, no doubt. And so I think that'll be the case, but those who Zoom want to have the communal experience and to be able to be there. So
it is pretty amazing
I
to,
mean, I really like the Zoom room afterwards. And then sometimes in the beginning, there's some interaction with, but much of the service, 3/4 of it could be just live stream, the better effect. Or,
Yeah.
I guess we need to look at all options, that's all.
yeah. The other thing I would suggest too for next year is if people are planning on attending via Zoom, that they themselves are very familiar with Zoom, because sometimes that's an issue too, that people they don't know how to use the chat or raise their hand or something like that. So we just need to do a little bit more. We'll certainly requesting if people can come in person, that would be great and ideal, because it is tricky to try to manage a lot of people via Zoom for a meeting like that anyway. And then that if they choose to use Zoom, that there are oftentimes or occasionally some shortcomings to that. So they should certainly practice and know Zoom, know their way around the Zoom features if they want to participate to the fullest extent that way. So lessons learned,
Mhm.
onward.
Just,
Yes,
just kind of to continue that, we made a commitment to solicit, to have, solicit's not probably the right word, but to have other members, remote members of our church. Dick Burkhart being one of them, Terry Anderson, Mike Long, the ones that I know about, and there probably are others. If we've made that commitment and we've got people who joined our church and are members, it seems to me that we're a bunch of amateurs fooling around with a highly technical thing that almost demands, since we made this commitment, that we hire a consultant that gets us, that shows us, teaches us how to do this and makes sure we've got the right equipment. Because otherwise, who in blazes in this church has got enough technical knowledge to make this work? I'm hearing people bouncing ideas back and forth as if it's a fourth grade class.
no,
It's
I think
just
we
throwing
actually
things
do
out.
have that knowledge and expertise in our church. It works very well via Zoom on Sunday mornings. And it would have worked at this annual meeting had we been using that technology. Had we been using our Zoom room, because Terry Anderson was there attempting, in fact, he was in the Zoom room thinking that's where the meeting was going to be held.
Hmm.
So we already have, I think, if we had used our current technology that we use on Sunday mornings for this annual meeting, we would have had a fraction of the technology issues, if any.
Wouldn't there still have been the 30 or 40-second delay?
No. No,
Yes.
because there's not on Sunday mornings.
Okay,
No, that 30 to 40 second delay is the live stream. So the live stream is always being seen about 30 to 40 seconds later than it's happening. But which doesn't matter because there's no interaction, so folks can't tell.
Right.
Whereas if they're zooming, and that is a problem. Often if somebody tries to get on their phone and enter into the Zoom room from inside the sanctuary, and they don't turn off their Wi-Fi and use data only, they bog down the system, and all of a sudden it starts freezing up. So something about the bandwidth, and as I understand it, it's as wide as we can get in that building at this point. So, but we haven't budgeted for it, but I would say that if we were going to invest in anything, it would be to invest in more broadband.
Yeah, well, I'll ask the saltwater tech team and see what they say. Yeah. How they give
Thank you.
detailed appraisal of what they're actually doing. Because it seems to work to me.
Yeah, just the fact that they have a tech team. There you go.
Right. And
Okay.
I once listened into a service from West Seattle. And that was even more professional. It was very well done. Felt very. There's quite a difference between sometimes you go to a big theater or movies or whatnot, you get a real professional kind of performance, and you notice the difference between just an ordinary Zoom room. And the West Seattle one was actually one of the most professional I've ever seen.
Good.
So I
Well,
might try to, I know some people there too, so I might try to ask how you guys do this, especially their music. And it was over Zoom, but there was maybe the better hardware or something.
maybe. Okay. Any other technology comments? Okay. Well, kinks to work out. Other annual meeting things that came up, we have the one issue of the last I think it was the last vote. And Candace, maybe you can help me because I know you've reviewed some
Yeah.
of the,
It was the second to the last one, I think.
okay, so it was the vote related to the congregation voting to direct the board to send the document to David Eagle that
Right.
that shares where he could find the bylaws of which he was trying to propose we insert into our bylaws. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. But at any rate, so that vote is my understanding, and Candace will help me here, that this vote is actually null and void because there was not a discussion. There was not a second to the motion, nor was there a discussion. However, we want to make sure that not only David Eagle, but the entire congregation knows and understands that there was no, what seemed like was being spoken about as like a secret document that we had circulated amongst ourselves. When
Yeah.
really there was a document that I sent in the May, before the May meeting, because I knew that meeting was going to take us some time to go through our motions from the congregants. And I wanted particularly Lilia and Sarah and those who had not participated in our bylaws work to be very familiar with the bylaws that David was proposing, that they were already in our bylaws in different places. So I
Right.
created a document and sent that to the board to just simply show this is where these are. So a couple of things. Well, I think I'll just step aside for a second and let Candace
Well,
take it, because I know she's done a little bit more research than I have, certainly.
yeah, well, there's two different issues, but the document was really what Lynn prepared. It was a cut and paste of different different parts of the bylaws where the redundancies occurred. So that's what that document was. So there were several issues. I've done some research, and as you said, after the motion was stated, no one seconded it, and there was no discussion. It went directly to the vote. And I researched in Robert's rules. I'd never really gone through Robert's rules before, so it was really interesting that if that doesn't happen, then the vote is discarded, because you have to have debate and discussion on every motion. So that's that issue. And then this morning I was doing research because after the board meet, or after the annual meeting, a number of us board members afterwards were going, you know, can the congregation really direct the board to do something? You know, we weren't sure, it didn't quite feel right. And so I contacted a parliamentarian that I got his phone number from the National Parliamentarian Association. And I asked him that question, and he said, well, the congregation can pass a resolution suggesting that the board do something, but they cannot direct the board to do something. And he went on to say, you probably have in your bylaws wording to the effect that the board is responsible for the affairs of the congregation. And I said, you know, I'm not sure that particular language is in there. And then he said, well, go to your state, Washington State, Washington Codes and Regulations for Nonprofits. And if it states in there that the board is responsible for the affairs of the organization, then you're covered, even if it's not in your bylaws. So I did go and found on like page 53 or something, and it does state that in the Washington Handbook for Nonprofits. That's a little different issue, but so that was another reason why that vote was null and void, is because the congregation can't direct the board to do something. They can only vote to suggest that the board do something. I hope that makes sense.
Well,
Oh.
we've got competing parliamentarians, because I too consulted a national parliamentarian on those two issues, and I got different answers.
Mm.
I consulted Gail Knapp, who is a national, who teaches at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And I sent her considerable information, almost verbatim, that I, got from the recording of the meeting. And then I asked her several questions. And her response was that reading again exactly, the membership can direct the board on any action that is not specifically given to the board in the bylaws. Now, we didn't get into the state law, so I would need to see the state law, but she said the only way you could have, unless there's something else in the federal or state law, the only way you could have that would be to pass a bylaw that would say directly that the congregation cannot direct the board to do anything.
Mm.
And
Okay.
that was her answer. And the other answer, when I posed the question about the way that things were handled, the reason I didn't ask for a second was because 37 people had voted after some discussion to put the item on the agenda. So I said that whether I felt that as a moderator that eliminated the need for a second. And she said that under those circumstances of that number of people voting to put the item on the agenda, that a second wouldn't be required. And then in response to the commentary, she said, if the chair did not ask for debate, any member could have raised a point of order at that time. If the error was allowed to stand without anyone raising that point, then it becomes moot, since it was not timely. The only exception would be if there was something that was in a continuing effect, and then there could be a rescind. A motion to rescind, but that could only happen at another congregational meeting, since the congregation is the one who made the motion.
Mm.
We have competing parliamentarians.
I suppose we do. I didn't ask this particular parliamentarian about that second issue, but I mean, this isn't exactly what you did, Tom. And I mean, the way I look at it, it was an oversight. You did so well. You were being parliamentarian and the moderator, and I think you were doing just a great job, Tom. But there was no discussion. And so this, I mean, okay, I'll just read it. In 43.7 in Robert's Rules, it says, under legitimate parliamentary procedure, there is no such thing as gaveling through a measure. Now, you weren't gaveling through it, so I don't want to suggest you were. But the right of the members to debate cannot be cut off by the chairs attempting to put a question to vote so quickly that no member can get to the floor. If a vote has been taken, the vote must be disregarded. And I watched the recording again this morning, and you went directly from stating the motion, because you stated it for David, and then you asked him, is that okay? Do you want to come up here? And David must have said, no, that was fine. And then you went directly to the vote, and there was no pause or anything. And so, and that's straight from Robert's Rules.
But that same section continues with the question that Todd raised, which was after the vote was taken. Then if a member, seeks the floor, that the vote could be, that there could be continuing discussion. And that was also what I previously announced, that any ruling of the chair can be overruled by a vote of the people. And when Todd asked that question, And I said that that conversation had taken place. Indeed, there had been conversation, not formal debate. But
There was no conversation.
there
before the vote.
There was floor conversation that was going on, which shouldn't have been, but it was going on.
No, there was no conversation. Nobody was at the microphone. You went straight from stating the motion to asking for the vote. There was no conversation, Tom.
No conversation came to the mic. There, people were talking in the audience and they shouldn't have been. But
nobody heard them. Maybe the people around them heard them, but
well, I heard them and I was all the way up at the podium.
Is
well, I
that
didn't hear
considered
them, and I was in
conversation?
front.
That can't be considered conversation or debate. That's
Well,
not
it was
part of,
conversation. I would say it was not formal debate, but at
right.
any
So,
rate, we're kind of stuck at this point with what happened. So it's like rehashing the 2020 election. There isn't any point in rehashing. We have to figure out where to go from here.
well, that's
Yeah.
easy. It's, I think, a super easy fix.
It is.
But Todd, you had your hand up and did you want to?
Well, I was just gonna say, we have two competing parliamentarian interpretations of this. I would, I would think we have to figure out, what the actual right answer is. I would be surprised if, if a congregation can dictate to the board what decisions it's supposed to make. That is what the board is elected to do. There's nothing in our bylaws that allow the congregational responsibilities are spelled out in the bylaws, and that's not one of them. So I would have serious questions about that, and I'd wonder what's to stop the congregation from coming in and saying, well, we know Todd has a contract, but we're going to direct Todd to speak on a certain issue once a month, or to not speak on a certain issue once a month, and say, well, we're directing the minister to do this, or we're directing the operations team manager to do this. Those are things that we have systems put in place because of the bylaws. This is basically saying the congregation overrides the bylaws anytime it wants. I'm opposed to that message, to the message that goes out. That is the message that I got from that. When I thought it set a really bad precedent. And I'm also would be disturbed to think that a vote that a motion that was not seconded and not discussed would be considered legitimate in any way. Now, I agree, Tom. I don't think this is a big deal. I mean, I don't think that this issue, this vote, this matter is a big deal. I think we can let it.
I don't either.
We get the document out, and I would agree. I mean, Tom, first of all, I would say you were brilliant. I mean, and I saw the bullshit flying at you from the floor. Constantly, the numbers were changing. You're trying to be moderator, you're trying to be parliamentarian, you're trying to be, psychotherapist at times. And I think towards the end of it, just this one thing got past you. And part of it was because one of the things that you were doing, properly so, but what was, there were occasions where you would say, is there enough interest in this for us to move forward? And I think what happened with that issue is you meant to do that, and then got lost lost at where you were at because of something else that happened that was rather confusing at that time. And instead of remembering that you weren't, because you basically were just trying to see if there was enough were enough people interested in this to vote on it, but then it went from, you counted their response as the vote. Right, you didn't say, oh, okay, there is enough. So do we have a second? Do we want to have discussion? That's the part that just got left out. But I mean, that is our process, right? That is what we're used to having in these things, and it didn't happen in this case. And so I think we just need to make sure that in the future you're not alone up there. You have the support you need, or whoever's up there has the support that they need. That's the simple solution. But this is a parliamentarian quandary where you're being told one thing and the documents that Candace read are saying another. as is the parliamentarian that she contacted, saying another. So we need to figure that out before next time, which is the right answer in case something like this comes up again. That's my opinion.
Well, the procedure could very definitely be handled better and lesson to be learned for the future. But I think the bigger item, and I don't know whether it'll ever arise again, is this issue of whether the congregation can direct the board to do something. Because the examples that you gave, Todd, would have answers. One, the congregation can't direct a change in the contract that the board has with the minister. So that would be ruled out of order. If there was a clear violation, if the direction was clearly to violate state law or federal law or local law, that would clearly be ruled out. But the bylaws lacking a statement saying the board or the congregation can't direct the board, then that means, as I got from my parliamentarian, the one that I've relied on for several years, is if it's not in the bylaws to prohibit it, then it's okay as long as it doesn't violate state, federal, local laws. So, in the case that was here before you, it didn't, and there's nothing clearly in the bylaws that prohibits it. You've stated some things, but I think they're fairly vague and arguable.
Yeah, I find that very disturbing. If that's true, that the congregation can come together and anybody on a whim can make a motion and say, we're going to direct somebody not under the congregation's authority. I mean, we have distributed authority through our bylaws that is distributed to various people, including the board. For a congregation to come and say, we're not even going to discuss what documents we're talking about here. We're going to direct you to give your documents to somebody.
But there was discussion of
That
the
could not be
document.
ethical. That's authoritarianism.
There was discussion of the document because David described the document when he amended the agenda, and he came forward and re-described it again, not in detail, but a document that had been used by the board to help make its decision to not have his amendment on the agenda. So.
So can I want to,
I have a question.
I want to speak to that. Dick, Dick, did you have a question?
Well, I have a comment because I've done a lot of parliamentary procedures. And I know that, something like an annual meeting where if something goes wrong, you can't revisit to the next annual meeting. The solution is that you always need a parliamentarian. Because in my experience, when you have somebody up there in front of a meeting, their minds are so preoccupied, they get mixed up, they forget things. It's just human nature. And you need a separate parliamentarian who's sort of sitting back and say, oh, you forgot this. And often I've been in the audience and I'll remind, oh, you've got to ask for a second, you have to ask for discussion, things like that, because people just forget those things. So you need a parliamentarian. But on the issue of always, and I say in your annual meeting, always have a parliamentarian, and they should work carefully with the MC, and they're just sort of to catch these inevitable errors or oversights. And the other thing is though that on the congregation directing the board, that would be legal only if there's something in the bylaws that says on this subject, the congregation can have this input to the board. If it's not in the bylaws, as someone said, they could make a suggestion, but they couldn't actually take something that had legal force unless the bylaws spell out there's a role. And often can be roles for the congregation in certain kinds of situations where you want congregation input if possible. You want a certain vote that requires a quorum of the congregation, for example.
And we do have all of those things spelled
Yeah, so I
out.
think you're probably okay there.
I just.
And that's where a parliamentarian could say, oh, if you can't do that because it's not in the bylaws, you see. That could be a suggestion or something.
Mhm.
And just because, just need an extra person.
It was a really impossible position, Tom.
Yeah.
And not only that, we also need somebody to, and Robert has already volunteered for next year to even just to, as the numbers change, to have somebody else calculating the new quorum and the new
Right.
2/3
Right,
and,
right.
it's just, you were wearing way too many hats, and that was a lesson learned. We just recently changed our bylaws to say that we could have a board member serving as a moderator and serving as a parliamentary advisor. And I just, I just think my mind was boggled. I can't even imagine what your mind was doing at that. It was just there were way too many things. However, in my opinion, what is most disturbing to me and the easiest fix, the most disturbing thing to me was sort of the optics of what appeared to sound like some secret document. And this board has been so diligent about being transparent with this congregation, being open and friendly and welcoming and wanting their input and sharing our points of view and hoping that we would get support and buy-in and all of those things. And that is the most important thing to me as we move forward. I never wanted to send this, well, I did want to send this document to David Eagle when I sent him the letter to say that his proposal was not going to go forward to the congregation, but I was advised not to in the May board meeting. However, I don't want to send it just to David Eagle now that the whole congregation or the participants in the annual meeting anyway, believe that there is this document out there or inside somewhere. I want it addended or added to the minutes of this meeting, and I want it posted in the Sun as part of our board slivers so that people can see it is simply a cut and paste document of where the proposed amendments that David was recommending or proposing are already present in our bylaws. So that's what I will submit to Candace and or send that to Candace. And then we'll get that published, and this will be in the minutes that this vote was null and void. However, this document is right here for anybody who wants to take the time to read it. It's really just our bylaws cut and pasted in certain sections.
You need to have that formalized as a motion as a board, if that's what the board wants to do.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll make a motion then that I move that we publish the cut and pasted bylaws document that we used at the May meeting. That we publish that as an addendum to this, or as an addition to these minutes, and that it is published in the Sun board slivers.
I second it.
All okay.
Discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You see, I catch those things.
Good job. Discussion. Is there any discussion on that?
Well, I'm not a board member, but since we've had competing parliamentary advice, I urge you not to put in there that the motion was null and void, because that in itself is going to be raising aggravating questions.
I think that's something that the board can discuss and vote on. And I can read again what I read earlier. Dick Steele has just come on. So I mean, we know what happened, or at least I can do a recap of, I'll be writing the minutes for the annual meetings. So, I've got to jump ahead watching the video of the meeting. I watched it twice. The last time was this morning. And so on motion 6, David's motion to, I'm blanking, to direct the board to send him that document that internal document. the motion was made. It was not seconded. There was no discussion. It went directly to the vote. And the reason that I'm proposing that that vote be null and void is because in Robert's Rules 43.7, it says under legitimate parliamentary procedure, there is no such thing as gaveling through a measure. Not that Tom gavelled through anything, of course, but the right of members to debate cannot be cut off by the chairs attempting to put a question to vote so quickly that no member can get to the floor. If a vote has been taken, the vote must be disregarded. So that's directly out of Robert's Rules. So to my mind, those others might have some other opinions. To me, that's enough to go ahead and take a vote on whether we put in an addendum that the vote is null and void. But there might be other opinions. That's my opinion.
But am I correct then that this motion is to do what was requested? Because that vote was null and void? Are we actually doing?
Well, we were at my motion is simply to get this internal document out to the congregation.
Is that what this? David
That was my
requested?
motion.
Was
So
that what
if
was-
this is a second, if this is
It's
a
a
different
separate
motion,
Yeah.
But was that what his motion was on in the meeting?
Yes, to direct the board to give that member that internal document.
Yeah, so we're actually doing what he requested as a
Yeah.
board, but not through the annual meeting then. Is that right?
Well, it actually complies with what he wanted. He wanted the document, so it's
Yeah,
gonna be.
so we're doing that plus more, so that
Yeah.
seems to be no big deal. We're doing what they asked, you see. And so.
Yeah, but yes, but I think the second motion that we're also talking about here has to do with this interpretation of Robert's Rules of Order that Candace has described. So Lynn is suggesting that we go ahead and post the minutes or add this document to the minutes. That's the motion on the table right now.
Yeah.
And
right.
then, but also have a motion that says the motion as presented in the annual meeting was null and void because there was no discussion. And it would probably be good to do both, because then you're kind of, I don't know, walking a good line there. Here's the stock. It's really nothing. As Lynn said, get rid of the optics of secrecy.
Yeah, I just.
And
think you could do
also
them together. Yeah,
stop the precedent of,
stops the precedent of that the congregation can just direct the board.
yeah.
Right.
I guess I'd like to see them linked somehow so that people understand what's going on there.
right.
Well,
Yeah.
You really need two separate motions.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we're saying.
So
You can't
is there any
wrap it all
discussion about just posting the document? Is there anybody against that? I don't think so.
Sounds
And
great.
Catherine is voting via phone to me. So, let's do this really,
Vote.
yes. If you are in favor of my motion. Dick, did you hear the motion?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know what the motion is, yes.
Okay. Dick Steele. Okay, so if you would
Well-
raise your hand.
Well,
Just
I
board
don't-
members right now, thumbs up for Catherine.
Yeah, just the current board members.
Yeah, just the current board members, Dick.
Okay, so
It's
I
not,
think
it's not July yet.
it's not July, you're not a board member yet. But you're very, very helpful.
Right. There are two dicks.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so that is a passed motion. Now, Candace, do you want to make this other motion?
Sure.
Okay,
I move that in an addendum, no, that's, okay, I'm getting confused here. Okay, I move that in the minutes of this meeting and in the board slivers that goes out in the sun, that it be stated that motion 6, as it was voted on, is null and void due to no discussion or debate occurring before the vote. Is that clear enough?
Yeah, and then we'll just explain
I'll
What-
explain more.
what
Yeah,
that
Yeah.
motion or what that vote was, or okay, what
Yes,
that motion was. Okay, I'll second that.
Yeah, and yes, approved. I guess we have to have discussion.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
Boy, trying to be as unbiased parliamentarian as I can. I mean, that's the motion. Technically, in minutes, you don't need to have the debate, you just need to have the decision. So when you say, Candace, you're going to add something to it, that really rubs me wrong as a parliamentarian. It doesn't need any explanation, you just vote yes or no. That's
Well-
the only thing that needs to be in the minutes.
no, so are you wanting me to take out something from that motion, Tom?
Well, you said you'll explain things extra or something like that. That's what
I
Yes,
said
I
that-
did.
I
What's
said
that?
that, or I asked her to, because as Dick Burkhart said,
All right, yeah.
it needs to be linked so that people
Yeah.
understand what we're talking about. If this is gonna go into the board slivers,
Yeah, it can just be a comment. It doesn't have to be.
yeah,
something
just a
official.
brief, like
Just-
this
flat.
particular motion that was related to this vote that was taken at the annual meeting, so people understand what we're talking about,
Mhm.
not whatever Candace is just thinking at the time.
Right, I mean,
Yeah, just,
so,
you could even explain that you lacked a parliamentarian. The next time we'll have a parliamentarian to
Oh.
catch these things.
Just for your information, Dick, I am a registered parliamentarian and I
Yeah.
was also the presiding officer, and they can be both. Not that
Yeah.
that was a good idea, but
Yeah,
you don't need to mention a parliamentarian in any kind of
No,
yeah, but it's helpful to have two people though, even if you know them both.
but that doesn't need to be in any motion.
Yeah,
It's not gonna
motion-
be in the motion. It won't be in the
It's not gonna
motion.
it's not in the motion, yeah.
It-
Okay,
But
Well,
that,
so do you want me to restate the motion?
No, I
no,
don't.
I
think the motion
think
is-
we're good. I
Yeah.
think we can,
I think just exterior explanation of what's going on, that's all.
yeah.
Yeah. So-
Okay, so let's
So-
vote on, are we ready to vote?
point,
But Dick's-
Point of
Richard
clarification
still
for
has
me.
the-
a point of clarification. If this were voted down, would that preclude us from making a statement that there were issues around the vote and that the board is choosing to post it here so everybody can see what it was? I
Are
mean,
you,
are we precluded from doing that? I mean, we can have a sense of the board. Need it be is there, what value is there in making it an official motion?
I think the value in this is that the congregation has this idea. We set a precedent at the annual meeting, I think, that the congregation can do that. And so we want to be super clear about what happened, that this one is null and void because there was no discussion, no debate. And we'll clearly going to need to do some more research on that because we have competing research going on here, but can they do that anyway? So I think it just clarifies things.
well, I think there's two issues about that motion. The first issue is that the motion was made, it was not seconded, there was no debate, and it was voted on. And it says in Robert's Rules of Order, if that happens, the vote is disregarded. So that's one issue. The other issue with the competing parliamentarians is, can the congregation vote in an annual meeting to direct the board to do anything? And I talked to a parliamentarian this morning, a registered parliamentarian, who said that the congregation can pass a resolution to suggest the board do something, but not to direct them. And that's because the language in our state's code for how nonprofits are governed, that the language is in there stating that the board is responsible for the affairs of the organization. And not my parliamentarian, but the one I talked to, said that that's enough to say that the congregation cannot direct the board to do anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it seems to me that the motion which is on the floor addresses the first, period. It doesn't address the second in any way, shape, and form. The first is a matter of fact, the second is an educational issue. And I think that those two things need to be separated.
I do too. I do too. Yeah. Yeah. But I think the one issue about whether the congregation can direct the board to do anything is still up in the air.
Yeah, that's an educational issue, and that's probably something that needs to be taken up, over time, and sort of like not in an issue in a motion which addresses a matter a question of fact in a past meeting. We can establish, we can put down that the facts are such that the board, even if this were something that the board were bound by, could take issue with because it wasn't done in a proper way. That's the whether it met it passes muster, and it clearly doesn't pass muster. I think that's fine to put it in. I don't know that there's a great deal of benefit in putting in it. I think we could simply make a mention in passing that the way that it was handled in the meeting raises questions as to the force it would have had, should it come to trying to determine whether it was legally binding or not.
But nevertheless,
I didn't understand the last thing that you said, Dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like if a motion seems to be passed which is not properly passed,
Right.
does that have any force under any circumstances? My answer is in that case no, because it wasn't properly passed. But I think everyone in the congregation would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question is, had it been properly, had it formally been passed, then how would this be interpreted? That's a different issue. And I think that's an issue that probably the next board could with benefit take a look at, because this might happen in a future congregational meeting.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for restating that.
so Jean, can we take this vote, and then do you have a comment, or do you want to say something before we take this vote? You're muted.
My understanding is that the congregation has the final word on any issue. So any vote that they take is a direction to the board and the minister that is what the congregation wants to do.
Mhm.
But Jean, they're trying to work on one motion right now, and that isn't part of this motion to declare, something null and void. That's a whole other.
That's another issue.
Well, yes, okay. Well, are you going to keep discussing the issue of can the congregation tell the board what to do?
I don't know if we'll continue it tonight. I think it needs to be an ongoing discussion and more consultation and yeah, I don't know that it'd be helpful to continue discussing that tonight.
Well, that's what my comment is directed to, is that.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and vote on Candace's motion. We good? All right, if you're in favor of that motion.
Okay, fine.
So
I
am
can
I,
do that.
am I officially on the board yet or not?
Not
Not
yet.
Not yet,
Not yet, okay, let's make sure.
not yet. Dick, I'm the other Dick who is taking your
Okay,
place.
okay, let me make sure.
This
So
time, only for 1
2,
week.
3. So all the board members are voting yes on that motion, Candace.
And Catherine too.
And Catherine too. Catherine has sent me a
Okay.
thumbs up.
And are you somebody gonna clarify the motion since there's been such a roundhouse of discussion? So that it's clear?
Do you want to read it again, Candace, or?
Well, shouldn't have that been done before the vote?
Well, you all voted on it, so you must have all assumed you know what you voted on, and it's not unprecedented for the vote, the item, the motion to be restated afterward, particularly when
Oh,
there's
okay,
been
okay,
such a
that's fine.
roundhouse of discussion.
Okay, I'd be happy to, Tom. I move, my brain's a little scrambled now. I move that I move that motion 6 that was voted on during our recent annual meeting be declared null and void because after the motion was stated, there was no debate or discussion. And according to Robert's rules, 43.7, just a minute, 43.7, it says that if there's no debate then of a motion, then the vote is discarded. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Good. Okay, done. All right. We are running behind on our schedule now, guys, although Todd already gave a bit of a report on North NAUA, which is on our agenda tonight. So is there anything else from the annual meeting that any other board members wanted to bring up that needed to be debriefed? Those were the 2 main things that we discussed in the exec team and little different discussions. Any other suggestions? Lessons learned? Okay. All right, we got a year to figure things out. Onward and upward. Okay, well, Todd in his minister's report gave us a bit of an update on the North American Unitarian Association. And we did, as an entire congregation, vote to join. And so UUCS is an official member of NAUA, which is so exciting. It does sort of feel like, to me, not only are we a founding member, but I just sort of still feel like we are the mothership. And I love that role that we play. And I know that there are congregations and individuals looking to us for inspiration and guidance and hope that their congregations will get through whatever they're going through. And so I just think it is a fabulous thing that we get to be a part of this and that we are in this place after going through all the things that our church and our congregation did. I would love to just update a little bit, and I don't even know that Candace and Todd know all of these details yet because Robert and I are working pretty diligently trying to get the North American Unitarian Association established as a 501c3, which takes quite a bit of time and effort simply because we are a brand new baby organization. We actually have 27 months to be able to get ourselves, our feet underneath us, and to apply for that status with the IRS, which is a really big deal. And I didn't know that. I'm learning as I go on all of this to be a nonprofit status does not make you, or tax exempt is not necessarily all the same thing as being as cool as being a 501c3. So we are in that process right now. And my husband and I, Robert and I, are working on getting that paperwork, all ducks in a row, to bring that forward to the NAUA board so that we can go over those details with them. And then we may be seeking some further guidance, either with tax people or lawyer people, to make sure that we can submit that. It's a pretty costly endeavor. But it is really actually fun because you really get to look into the details of what are we doing and what services do we provide. So the IRS is very picky about who gets to be a 501c3. And we are really just even going to the website and looking at the services that NAUA provides to individuals and congregations is pretty exciting to write that out and to put it down on paper and to make little attachments for this paperwork has been really cool to just look at all of the offerings in the academy, the ministerial search guidance, the liberal beacon, just a whole bunch. We have a whole list of services if you go to our to the NAUA website, and it's pretty exciting. So I can take questions about that particular process. I don't know all the answers yet, but I'm happy to answer what I can if you have any questions about that. And I see Dick Burkhardt has his hand up.
Yeah, I've actually gone through that myself. I am a president of a 501c3 nonprofit called Democracy Works, which I put together probably 15 years ago or more now. So I've been through that, and yeah,
Right.
it may take I'm not sure how fast they are. That sometimes they're faster, sometimes they're slower, sometimes it takes a year or two. Sometimes until you get the full status, you need a fiscal agent or fiscal sponsor, something like that, to be official on your expenditures as being tax deductible. But the other thing I've learned over the years is that what they are really interested in is that there's some people who create 501c3s abusively. They want to use them for tax avoidance and do clever things. So a number of the things they ask for are designed to catch people who want to do that abuse. So just be aware of that. If something seems kind of weird, would somebody try to fake that or twist it or something? So there are things in there which are for that purpose. And so don't worry too much about a lot of it, because as long as we're legit and we make it very clear we're legit, we should be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You can see easily, even in just all the questions, it's a lot of pages to fill out.
Right.
And then you have to add a lot of attachments and addendums and all that kind of stuff.
And when you fill out the tax form, there's I think it was like a 13 or 14 page tax form I filled out for a tax exempt foundation, and there are all kinds of details there that, because some clever accountant is trying to do some clever thing to help his client avoid taxes,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can see with these questions, all the places where people could make something up and figure something out to try to get this status. But yeah. Anything else?
Thank you for doing that work, you and Robert.
It's been we kind of look at each other and go, we go 10:23 today. All right, let's do it. And then we get into it and it's like, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. So lots of coffee. Okay. Any other questions for Todd or any of us from about NAUA comments, thoughts? Yay for UUCS joining. Somebody did ask me, Todd, and I think it's so, I'm not sure if I was correct. They asked me how many organization members we have, and I think the answer is 4, but I'm not.
Yes.
Is
Yes,
it 4?
there's 4. So now there's UUCS. There's UMIAC. There's the Hayward NAUA Fellowship. And there is the other UUCS in Alabama, the UU Church of the Shoals.
So, yeah,
In Florence, Alabama. Yeah.
good.
I'm thinking too, another issue is that churches often obtain their 501c3 status sort of by virtue of their participation, like in the UUA, or in this case, the NAUA. In other words, that they can sort of inherit the 501c3 status. We probably need to make sure that everyone understands that and how that works. I'm not sure exactly if there's certain procedures you have to go through. But like
That's really the biggest question I have is, according to the tax code, churches are automatically exempt. The IRS doesn't like to make that clear, and they want us to jump through the hoops and go ahead and get the official status. I never quite understand why. But churches are automatically exempt. If you read the code, that's what it says.
yeah, but
That automatically means exempt means they are 501c3. They don't have to declare themselves as such. The problem is it often causes problems when you're doing business with organizations that want your 501c3 proof, and you can't explain. We are tax exempt because we're a church, and the tax code declares us as exempt. So people who contribute to us already should have no problem putting that down as a charitable donation on their tax forms, even without the 501c3 status. And all they have to do is cite and this happens a lot. There's a guy here in town who's been building small houses for homeless for years, churches. And the city keeps fighting them and saying, you can't do that. And he said, yes, we can, because this is church property and the law allows us to. And they say, no, you can't. And he said, yes, we can. And they say, well, we'll go ahead and then we'll suspend the rules and we'll give you the permit. And no, we don't want your permit. We don't need your permit. This is a church. We have the right to do this. And so that's kind of the game that's played a lot with churches. But
Yeah,
we're already exempt.
There's a fundamental issue there, and that is, what is a church? What organization has the authority to call itself a church? That's really what's going on. And if NAUA gets 501c3 status and say we're an organization that churches can join and whatever, then like this church in Austin, Texas, which was it Hearts and Minds or whatever, if they join NAUA, then that will automatically make them a church. So otherwise somebody might just.
We're a church. No, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that. There's a lot of independent churches that exist.
Yeah, but a lot of the non-denominational independent ones have to, once they become non-denominational independents, they often have to go through the 501c3 status separately to verify that the IRS says, oh yeah, you are a real church. Because otherwise somebody can cheat and say, oh, I'm a church, but they aren't a real church.
Well, yeah, the thing that's tricky for us though is not everybody that joins us may be a church, right? UMIAC's not a church.
Yeah.
So,
Individuals are not a church.
We are by definition a church. A church is not a single entity.
UUCS is a church. NAUA is an organization.
Right.
No, NAUA is a church.
Now NAUA is considered a church because we are a religious.
If you're a denominational association of churches, you're considered a church.
Otherwise, we could have filled out the 1023 EZ, but because we are a church, we have to do the 1023 long form.
And if you want to get technical, you might have organizational membership, like for UMIAC, that's not for churches. You can have individual membership, you can have non-church memberships, and you could have church memberships. And so if this group in Austin, Texas decides to join because they want the church status, they could go through that.
Yeah.
And I know they're considering it, but they haven't decided to yet.
Well, we better figure out our own 501c3 before we start telling
but
anybody
I
else.
just-
they can do that.
Karen
Some of the
has,
questions that come
Karen
up.
has her hand
Oh,
up.
Karen,
Oh,
oh, you're
You're
muted.
muted, Karen.
You're muted, yeah.
All right. A couple questions. Is the UUA a 501c3? And secondly, has there been any kind of objection or reaction or anything to you, to the new organization from the UUA to NAWA?
Yeah, so I don't know the answer to, well, I don't know the answer to the first question. That is a good question. Since they were formed in 1961, if they went through the 501c3 process, I don't know, because they were already an established association that just sort of changed their name. And I don't know in the old days if any churches went through the trouble of getting 501c3 status. It would have been unheard of some time ago. So I don't know when the 50C3 law even came into effect, Karen. So that's a good question.
I could find out.
They are,
Could ask Tom Bean.
they are.
attorney.
It said,
Okay.
if
They are,
you
okay.
you can Google it, they are. They're a
I'm
501c3.
sure they are, yeah.
Yeah. So it behooves NAWA to become one.
The second question is, no, we have had no formal reaction by the UUA to NAUA. There's certainly a lot of people at the UUA that are saying nasty things about us, but we've not received any kind of threatening letters, which seems to be their MO these days. If they want to silence somebody, they go after them. Part of what we did was, right from the start, we went with the NAUA and not the NAUUA. We avoided the term Unitarian Universalist because we know they were going to come after us on that. They already have gone after another organization. I don't know if it would ever hold up in court, but we don't have the money to go to court. We don't want to have to start something and then have to go through all the articles of incorporation and get a new website and all that stuff we're paying for now. But we do say that we are an association of Unitarians, Universalists, and other religious liberal organizations. So that's kind of how we got around that, and that seems to have held them off from taking any kind of making any legal threats at us. And Unitarianism has been around forever, and so is Universalism.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can make a comment on that too. This Hearts and Minds group in Austin, Texas, that was prohibited from calling itself Unitarian Universalist, found a way around that. If you go to their website, the very first line in the website says, "We are not a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association."
Oh,
So everyone knows that they are Unitarian Universalists, but by themselves declaring they're not a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Oh,
wow.
they're clever, you see.
Yeah.
But the other thing I noticed is I listened into all the UUA board meetings, and a few times I brought up the NAUUA, some kind of comment or whatever. And I've never heard it even mentioned, even when I made a comment or asked a question related to NAUA. There's never been a response to even mention NAU. You would not know it even exists if you listen to UUA board meetings.
Good.
It's who must not be named.
Yes.
Right. And lots of other things too. So, but by the way, the UUA attorney, Tom Bean, is retiring this year. But he's not the one who's been the problem. It's been Kerry McDonald. He's the hard, the ruthless one. And Tom Bean, I think I got to know him because I did a responsive resolution, I think it was 2019 in Spokane, or maybe the year after that. On the COIC report, I did a responsive resolution to their call for engagement. And it only got, supposed to get 2/3, only got 55%, but in working through that, I worked with Tom Bean, and he seemed good to work with. And when I was in Pittsburgh this time, I think it was on Saturday, I was over near one side of the hall where he was working, and he saw me, came over and shook my hand. And so he said, we have some allies there.
Yeah.
They're
I
kind
also-
of in public. Also, Bill Young, the board secretary, he's been very cooperative. He's also kind of an ally.
Well, Bill Young's the one who wrote me a letter saying that he was reinterpreting the bylaws so that I can't run for president. So I'm not personally very fond of him. There's a lot of folks.
But again, Kerry McDonald's behind all that.
Yeah,
Kerry McDonald's
Bill
someone
Young
actually
needs to
did
stand
that.
up for himself.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. There's a lot of folks out there that don't believe in this stuff that are going along with it because they're afraid. I
Right,
understand
right.
that fear, but
Yeah.
this is not the kind of organization where you can let your fear get in the way of doing what's right. That's counter to what such an organization is about.
Mhm.
So I don't hold much quarter for them. But what I will say is there's another person, I'm not going to mention the individual's name, because it's gone into a legal situation now. I helped the individual find an attorney who is going after the UUA on this. But this is an individual that was high up in the organization, was forced to retire because the individual got cross with some of the new management, if you will, on programs that have been around, getting rid of programs that have been around forever. And the person started talking about it publicly and received a very threatening cease and desist letter from their attorneys. It wasn't even from Kerry McDonald, it was from a legal firm,
Mhm.
basically claiming that the individual had taken their email list, which was proprietary, all this kind of stuff, which is absurd. This person been in relationship with these people for decades. Anyway, but I read the letter. Hopefully it'll come out at some point. It was a very evil, threatening letter. And when the attorney who I know, who was in that jurisdiction, saw it, said, this is vicious. This is, and it's ridiculous, and wrote them, as the attorney said to me, I'm going to write them a FU letter today. So that's going on. And then there was an incident at the GA. I still need to find out the details, where a younger employee publicly stated that the UUA's Common Endowment Fund ought to morally divest from fossil fuel investments, and was fired on the spot, told to get out of the hotel room and fly back home.
Oh,
Yeah,
my.
there's Alex Sherwood, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, so you know about it?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, and I think I know who you're talking about in the other one too. There's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
discussion on the 7 principles list about that person, because the covenant team said that whole process was out of covenant. And that created a big uproar. And I think the covenant team was forced to back off later. Presumably Kerry McDonald was behind this again. I don't know. But that's there's a huge uproar now among the 7 principles group, because the video of that session is not available. I think it was the Saturday session, maybe.
I mean, they're so.
And then there was they've.
I think Karen has her hand up.
That's very interesting. I hadn't followed what had happened at GA about the divestment issue, but this was something that just roiled congregations about a year ago. When we were still in the UUCEF, but we got out for a lot of reasons having to do with the direction of the UUA. But it was the current UUA president who invited this group of young activists to present before the UUCEF board about immediate divestment from fossil fuels. And the UUCEF fund was arguing that it's a good long-term goal, but to immediately divest would cause congregations like ourselves and many others who invested in the fund to have huge losses, immediately. And these people were very, very militant. They came to these meetings are full of investment advisors from Boston and all over the place. And they were telling these very, very practiced investment advisors who were saying, we can divest, over time, serially. but not immediately. They were saying, you know, the blood of our ancestors is on your hands. We have to divest immediately and we have to disperse all the money for reparations. So I'm curious what happened between those very fiery statements about a year ago and then the UUA opposing the divestment
Yeah.
issue.
I hope
Probably
I can
because of
find
the-
out more about the details, Karen, because I'm curious about it myself. It seems a really odd reaction.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, let me know if you find out anything.
I will. I will.
I used to, I'm still linked into the UCEF Zoom meetings, but we're no longer a member, so I haven't been attending
Oh,
recently.
okay.
Yeah.
And if I
know-
understand correctly, at the, there was a vote that was taken and to divest immediately. And I believe that did not pass. Am I incorrect on that?
Yeah, I know something about that. The vote was only 68. Let's see, it was 68% of what they won against the business resolution. The business resolution was to divest from fossil fuels and for about to the tune of about $15 million or so, and put that money into a very vaguely defined reparations fund.
Right.
And it wasn't about anything immediate, but what they talked about was I think they said like maybe a quarter, 30% of their common endowment fund was directly managed by the UUA financial staff and volunteers. And that means they were putting that money, that quarter of the endowment fund, into certain particular stocks or whatever. But most of it, the 3/4 or so, was managed through various things like mutual funds, socially responsible funds of various kinds. And that was where the problem was. They decided that the way this thing was put together, it forced them to get rid of all the mutual funds, all those other things where they have professional managers making sure risk was taken care of and balance and all kinds of things, and force the UUA to hire more staff and get more volunteer professionals to sort of micromanage things which before they had not wanted to do. They had a few big things they were comfortable with, but they didn't want to micromanage everything else. And so this was, and they felt that's what they'd have to do, and they felt that that would increase the risk, not just for the UUA, but for all the churches in the Common Endowment Fund, and also reduce the yields.
Mhm.
And that was what the real stickler was. And the youth, also, there was one other thing, they'd also invested in some oil companies just so they could vote as part of coalitions of
Right.
groups, nonprofit groups who wanted to try to pass resolutions at the annual shareholders meetings. And it turned out, I think they decided to back off from those because some of the requirements as it went up. Now, you can't just do it with just a few stocks. I guess you need more and more these days. So they decided to back off those, but they still weren't comfortable trying to replace all these mutual funds and whatever and socially
Right.
responsible investment funds, because
It seems
There
like
were lots of-
out of it.
there were lots of details, like how could they go into a fund and say, oh, you can't have even the tiniest sliver, directly or indirectly from this particular, from a fossil fuel thing. You might have some big company. See, I used to work for Boeing, and maybe they do some tiny little thing that uses fossil fuels or benefits from it, and therefore you have to get all Boeing stock,
Mhm. Right.
and there were
So
all kinds of
I'm gonna-
things like that.
I'm gonna just interrupt for a second because I wanna, it's already almost 8 o'clock. We have about 7 or 8 more minutes. And I would love to hear, I mean, we've been talking about what happened at General Assembly and that's where you were right now, but I
Right,
wanna just take a couple more minutes if you would just give us a quick update on that, because I do wanna get to the last item on this agenda, getting the new board members ready for some of the transitions that are coming up. So if you'll just take a couple of minutes, and I know Tom was there and Julie, Jose
Well,
was
it's-
there, but Dick, if you wanna,
It's, it may take more than a couple minutes because there were some very, very significant things. And if you looked at the process, well, first of all, let me talk about the election. Which
Dick,
was,
I just want to make sure that, I mean, I think that it has to be a couple of minutes because we have we have about 6 minutes to go, and we've
Yeah,
got
okay, well, I'll try to make it real quick.
three other people who were there too, so.
Yeah, okay.
I can focus on maybe one or two things and then,
Yes, so on the elections, Sophia Bendecourt got 95%. Yes, basically 5% no approximately. The only other contested election was my election. I was running against 4 other people for 4 positions. And I had thought last year dissidents like myself got 10% of the vote, like for the board. And I figured, well, I could maybe double that this year because last year there was no work on the 7 principles, Article 2. So we have a much bigger group activated. So I figured I might get 10 to 25% of the vote. I actually got like 26 to 28%, depends how you measure it. So I actually did better than I expected. Now, if you go to Article 2, this is where it gets very interesting. There were about, I think, 13 amendments or something like that that were voted on. And what they did is they allowed the Article 2 Commission itself, one of their commissioners, to make a comment on each of those amendments, if they agreed with the amendment or not. And so if there's an amendment that the Article 2 people did not agree with, one of the members would get up, like anyone else, and say so. And when that happened, 70 to 80% of people voted against it, if that's what the Article 2 people wanted. Or if there was another one they were in favor of, 70 to 80% or more voted in favor. And that was invariable back and forth. You had a group of about 3/4 that was sort of like a mob, and their cues, the cues for that mob were what the Article 2 people wanted to do. They just followed that invariably. But there was one other thing on this, we talked about the reparations amendment. The board I think had some legitimate reasons for saying this is way too hasty, it needs to be redone. But they were worried that disvestment, all these things, reparations had a lot of popular support. So how did they cue their people? Well, besides the board statement, Susan Frederick Gray had made a statement supporting the board position. And then just the day before, Sophia Bendecourt made a similar statement. There was a question to her. So the mob got the cue. And that would have meant like a 75% vote against the reparations amendment. But the youth came out in favor of that, and they even had a walkout. They had a real fancy thing. Instead of 75%, it dropped it down to 68%. So the youth did have some effect, but pretty small. The mob pretty much held together.
Wow.
wow, thanks for that, Dick.
Thanks,
Thanks for running, and congratulations on getting more votes than any dissenters so far. That's a good sign in the right direction, if
Well,
nothing
this
else.
is another thing I forgot about that is last year, it was Beverly Cease and Rebecca Mattis. They told us they got some pretty nasty feedback. Like nasty words, you're racist, this kind of, this name calling stuff. And then year before, Jay Kiskel, he got some of that stuff too. And they, really kind of nasty stuff. I did not get any of that except for one person, Matthew Johnson, head of the Election Campaign Practices Committee. But otherwise, there was a big improvement in tone. I have a lot more respect than anyone's had before.
Good.
Yeah, the Rebecca Pace of the Fifth Principle Project wrote a daily summary of her experiences. And she said the same thing, Dick, that last year in Portland, they were shouted at, they were called Nazis, they were called racist. And they said, this time there was none of that. And then several individual members came up and said, oh, you're Rebecca Pace. Thank you for what you're doing. Right. So the distinct change in sort of like the tone, at least among some.
Great.
Yeah, the one thing with Matthew Johnson is when Sophia Bendecourt was going through a Q&A, he was the head honcho of that. He was the person doing that. And a few of the questions had asked Sophia Bendecourt, how are you going to handle this issue? The fact that you're only one candidate, and there are supposed to be 2 candidates for the position of president. Do you have any solution that makes sure that won't happen in the future? Or what's your feeling on that? And Matthew Johnson wouldn't even bring that up. Instead, he said, and this is quotes that he said, I think we're dealing with sexism and racism here.
Oh, my God.
And he actually said that, you see. And, and a lot of people were disturbed by that and, you know, 2 days, I think it was on Sunday, maybe the last day, I wrote a letter to what's called the Covenant Team, used to be the Right Relations Team, saying this is a very legitimate question and gave all the reasons for why we should be having 2 candidates and saying that these insults were unacceptable. And this is being reviewed. I haven't got a formal response yet.
It'd be good to hear if you
But
do.
that was the only negative thing.
I think we probably should invite Julie or Tom. to
Yes.
Say a few things too, because it's getting past my bedtime.
Todd.
Thank you.
I don't have any response. I would have deferred my time to Dick. He had all the information, much more than I have.
Julie, do you have
I
something?
have a brief response. I'm not as anti-UUA as you all are, and I resent a little bit being called one of a mob. I watched the business resolution discussion and formed my own opinion that I don't think it was a good idea from the various viewpoints of the fiduciary people, and I think that's a legitimate concern. So I'm glad that business resolution did not pass. And I did figure that the Article 2 rewrite would move forward, and it did. And I voted down different resolutions, different amendments, I mean, and I don't know. I just don't like being called part of a mob. But aside from
I'm
that,
not calling you part of a mob, but they're,
well, you did because I was voting.
well, but things voted different ways. Well, like, take the, for example, the final vote on Article 2 was like 86%. If you look at the, in favor of that, if you look at what the amendments, I would have expected at most 70 to maybe 75% in terms of how the amendments went. But what happened here is that the board said, well, give us more time for discussions, another year of discussions. So a lot of people who would have voted against that said, well, I'm going to vote favor, just to have another year of discussions. Now, what those discussions are going to be, I don't know, frankly.
Yeah, right.
I don't really believe it myself, but a lot of people brought into that. Yeah.
I'd like to just say to Julie, if I can, Julie, one of the things I appreciate most is that you were one of our delegates, that you voted your conscience, and that at UUCS you get to do that.
Okay, appreciate that.
That's good, right?
Thank you for allowing me to be the delegate.
Absolutely.
Which is it was. It's a lot of computer time. Don't
It
think
is a
I'll do
lot of
that
computer
again.
time.
Thank you
I
for doing it
appreciate-
for us.
I agree,
Thank you.
definitely. Thank you, Julie, Tom,
Okay.
Yeah,
Dick,
thank you, everybody. Yeah.
both Dicks. It is a big job, and it was not an easy job. I didn't think when I went. It was a lot of time to spend
is a
and
lot of
a lot of thinking things through. And it was not very pleasant in my experience, but I'm very deeply appreciative that people took the time to do that. So thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move on unless anybody else has last minute things. UUA, we'll move on to, well, let's welcome and recognize, I think we might have lost Doug Deaton already, darn it. So Doug has signed off, it appears, but Doug Deaton is joining the board. Dick Burkhart is joining the board, and Tom Mosier is joining the board, I believe in positions 1, 2, and 3. So congratulations. We will give you just a couple of minutes if you want to stick around and start thinking about how you're going to be moving forward. Sarah Darcy and Lilia, 2 of your members are not with us tonight. But we, on this, at least on this agenda, the exec team, which were 3 of us, were meeting on the the Wednesday before our board meeting. So let's get at least your next executive. I know you don't have an exec team yet, but that's when we were meeting to set the agenda, was the Wednesday before at 2 p.m. So you'll need to figure that out right away. And then we put the next board meeting as July 26th, which is usually the fourth Wednesday of the month. And from 6 to 8 p.m. And you have 10 board meetings to do. I think we did do last July, just simply because that first board meeting is a time to set your officers and get your feet under you. I don't think we spent a whole 2 hours that first one, but we thought we'd put that one on the in the minutes for when your next board meeting would be. So welcome. You won't be ditched. We're going to be around, lots of us here. You have our support. You have our grand wishes. You have our best wishes. We did want to take a moment to give you just maybe a couple of pieces of advice. Do you want to stick around for that, or just some couple minutes of thoughts? Candace, Candace is shaking her head. No, not so much. Okay, well, I want to share one brief story. I promise I won't take long. But Candace and I took a little gift over to Dorothy Mail, who was our recording secretary for pretty much almost the whole 3 years that I was on this board. And she made a little comment that I thought I meant to share at a board meeting, but I will pass it along now, because no one knows you better than your recording secretary, who sits so quietly, diligently, paying attention to what's going on at every meeting and taking the minutes. And what she said, which I thought was adorable, was about the last 30 minutes of every board meeting, we just become gibberish. And so I might just suggest that you keep your board meetings maybe to an hour and a half, and get the things done as much as you can, because it really does tend to get everybody's brains a little bit fried towards the end of a 2-hour meeting. So that's my little suggestion or piece of advice going forward. And I thought it was very sweet of her to be so kindly telling us, guys, those last 30 minutes.
She didn't suggest that the half hour of gibberish should be at the beginning, did she?
Well, you know, one of the things that's that is a thought process is to flip the agenda, because we have the routine things right up front that could become more, let's put some of these things at the end of the agenda because they're just routine, and put the business things that are important to really get into deep discussion about up front. That might not be a bad idea to think about.
One of the things that I'd have to check the bylaws for sure, but at least customarily, there has been a past president that has been an informal member of the board. I don't know that we actually have that in there or not, but how would this board, if that was desirable, how would this board approach that? Since Catherine is currently president, but is going to be resigning and generally not be available based on her mom's health. You all might think about that. I guess you don't need to answer that.
Well, I plan on coming, not to probably every single board meeting, but I have learned so much. And I really want to thank Todd. I have learned so much about policy governance from you. I have learned, I did not know how the church ran. I did not know what it meant to be a board member. I did not understand certainly policy governance. And once you understand policy governance well, and once you understand what it means to be a board member at UUCS, you just realize there's no other way to run a Unitarian Universalist church. There's no other way. It has to be this way. And I've just enjoyed myself so much for these past 3 years. They've been wonderful. It's been so delightful to work with so many supportive people. I can't believe what a wonderful gift Rebecca is. I would say get to know Rebecca well. She's just lovely and helpful. And the vast majority of our congregation is supportive and kind and wants us to be successful and wants to support the work that we have to do. So I just have enjoyed every minute of this time. And I want you to know I have perfect attendance. I need a little gold star for that.
Yeah.
So I'll be back. I'll just be poking my head in. And I'm certainly no parliamentary person. That's not my forte. But I do really understand policy governance. I think it's important that board members remind themselves frequently that you're volunteers, and there is a sweet spot for how many hours you put in that's good for your health. So keep that in mind too, for your well-being.
And speaking,
Yeah,
speaking strictly for myself, I would say I remain available as, you know, if you want to reach out, if I can be of assistance. My email will remain the same, and my interest in supporting our initiatives will remain the same too. So if there are ways in which I can participate, in ways in which I can contribute, I'm open to that.
Well,
And one other thing I would say, I commend the new members of the board. They bring talent and they bring commitment and they bring accomplishment and so on. It's really nice to see how the landscape looks as I look out towards the future.
just to address this issue of the president, past president, the bylaw says by majority vote, past presidents, either one or more, the board may be appointed as non-voting ex officio for the fiscal year. So it is possible that we might be tapping into you, Lynn, as a past president, and you, Dick, as a past president, either on certain matters or just being on call.
of course.
Absolutely.
And then regarding Catherine's vacant position, it says that the vacant position shall be filled by election at the next annual meeting with persons elected completing the remainder of the position's term. So, and then it says the board may fill vacancies temporarily by appointing by majority vote, pending the voting to elect trustees at the next annual meeting. So we're not mandated to fill this vacant position, although it would be desirable to have 7 rather than 6. But the next election, we definitely have to have a candidate.
Yep. If I remember, that's what happened with us too. And we went that whole first year with just 6, but that's up to you guys when
Yeah.
Catherine Alexander resigned.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only ones here since Doug has left would be maybe if we could get Dick Burkhart and me and Todd, because one of the things that needs to take place is what do you all call that when you have Todd, when you have that kind of a half a day, was it a workshop or something?
Yeah, board, we call it a board retreat. Yeah, but yeah, it's a couple of hours of orientation. Now, we used to do it at my home, but I don't know if we've done that since COVID ended.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
This
So
last year.
we can do that again, and that it's
Bye, Julie.
it's a little longer, and we can have lunch together or breakfast or something and talk about policy governance, and then the board will start to talk about maybe its goals that it wants for the coming year, that kind of stuff.
Well, when is that taking place? Ideally, it should take place as soon as possible, but with the the summer activities that go on. Did you hold it in
Yeah,
September? August, or what?
it usually ends up happening in late August or even September, I think. Did we do one in October?
We did.
We did do one in October, so yeah.
That's really late. I would suggest, Todd, that since you maybe have the more complicated schedule, that you might throw out late August, early September, some dates to the new board.
Okay.
And kind of take a poll about what we think we could make and plan on involving you, Dick Burkhart, by.
Yes, yeah, I would like to be able to maybe take the bus over from Seattle and actually be there physically, not just Zoom.
That would-
Most of the time I'll be Zoom, but it'd be nice to have at least one time meeting everyone in person.
Yeah.
We'll schedule it in enough time for you to make plans to do that.
Right, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we do that and I guess the new board,
Well, just give me some tentative dates and I'll see if they work for my schedule.
yeah, well, what about the fourth Wednesday, which is what we typically have done for a board meeting? And the week before, as they suggested, the executive committee at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I guess we need to throw those dates out to the.
Yeah, you're probably talking to the wrong.
Yeah, throw those out to the new board and see if those are gonna work.
Yeah.
I'll volunteer to throw those out. I'm not volunteering to be an officer, but I'll volunteer to throw those things out. Those dates to see if they would generally work for people to plan around and plan on.
Great. All right, I'm gonna go
Okay.
because my rear end is sore from sitting on a hard chair for. Thank you
All
all.
right, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.
Peace out.